Hey guys, so probably one of the most frustrating, difficult, make you question the validity of your own worth elements of teaching English, um, in Japan at least, is teaching young children. Uh, they have a lot more energy than you do, a lot less attention, and they see the world completely differently from the way you do. And this is something I struggled with a lot when I first started. I actually, my first year or two of teaching, I absolutely couldn't stand teaching young children. Um, but the simple fact is, these days in Japan, you don't really have a choice. Unless you get lucky and you find a position full time at like a high school or junior high or university, or even luckier and manage to piece together a living strictly teaching business classes to adults, you're going to be spending a lot of your time in the classroom with small children. So it's just something you're going to have to get used to and accept. And if you can't do that, then you should find a different job because it's not going to go away. So some really helpful things to remember with small kids is that they normally have a very good sense of humor if you can kind of play around with them. Um, that can make a big difference. I always just do silly things, like we'll do the alphabet and I'll just say like banana in the middle of it, and they'll be like banana chow yo, and like that. And they like being playful. So if you can keep that lightness in the classroom, kids generally respond to it. And it also helps to know a little bit about popular cartoons and stuff. In general, it's just some way to connect with them, like Anpan Man or Minion or Doraemon or something. And the truth is, a lot of the teaching involved with children is going to be extremely repetitive content. I mean, for the first few years, it's going to be the letters and their sounds, very, very simple words, vocabulary sets, focusing a lot on like colors, shapes, numbers, sometimes classroom items like crayon or paper, glue, stuff like that. So it's not by any means intellectually stimulating for you or for them. It's really kind of just this drill they put themselves through to learn the pronunciation of things and kind of build a basic familiarity with the language. Once a week is not going to be enough to make them proficient, but it is enough over time to give them um, almost a weird kind of aptitude that will come into play later, usually towards the end of elementary school and starting in junior high and high school. They will have a noticeable edge on their classmates who've never studied before, which it's weird. You wouldn't think so, but it's true. I've seen it time and time again. So definitely keeping things light, and then also not expecting too much from them. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Even if it's a super simple concept like I like this or I want that, a lot of them just won't get it. So you need to be extremely patient, like extremely patient, and just forget about it. If they're not getting it this time around, don't get upset with them. Don't blame them. Don't curse yourself or question yourself. Those are all really unproductive things to do that will leave you just more upset and tired, and nobody wants that. So lightness, humor with the kids, extreme deep patience, like we're talking like Zen master level patience, and then I wouldn't say low expectations because you don't want to just treat it like a joke, but you don't want to have overly high expectations because you'll set yourself up for defeat every single time. I've seen it time and time again. I've had coworkers you know, just vent for hours sometimes on how this particular kid in this particular class or this particular industry. Um, there's really no need for that. The fact is, you are providing a service. It's not really probably wouldn't be that impressive to somebody back home. Like yeah, I can have 5 kids sit down and listen to me and do the alphabet and stuff, but I've struggled with that to be honest. I've questioned if whether or not what I'm doing and investing is in the end a waste of time, and I've chosen this career and started a business and invested a lot, so those are pretty scary thoughts to entertain, but in the end, you are providing a service that people are willing to pay pretty good money for, and if you can just keep that in mind, and keep your ego in check, it can make it a lot easier. I mean, you have to remember there have been people throughout history who have made their living doing just bizarre things, standing there and holding a lamp, back in the day, or just chopping potatoes and cooking them in a restaurant. I mean, there's no shortage of just utterly dead end, kind of almost borderline humiliating jobs out there. So English teaching is really just another job, but there are elements of it that really can be frustrating, and probably the biggest one is small children, because you give them the tiniest little opening and they're going to take it, and they're like almost like little gremlins or Ewoks, the way they kind of follow each other, and they're very spontaneous and curious, and it takes a while to develop the presence to be able to control them and have them focus on what you're saying and do what you want to do. And a lot of it just has to do with patience. If you do get upset with them, you have to kind of explain to them why you're upset, let them know that there's a relationship between your emotional state and their behavior. And a lot of schools will advise against using Japanese in the classroom. Like, it's only English. And that's another thing. I just felt like, what are you trying to do here? You want these kids to learn English, they're only coming once a week, and I'm supposed to explain everything to them in English. It's not an immersion program, which is utterly bizarre. So I'm against that. I think basic commands and the ability to explain things should be allowed to be spoken in Japanese, because a lot of times the explanation of the task itself is going to be more difficult than the task, and you can spend 10 minutes trying to get the point across of what you want them to do, or you can do it in 30 seconds with their language, and you can mix and match it. You can say, take out your book, kyokasho dashite, or mondaishu dashite, take out your book, and eventually they'll learn to kind of connect the phrases. So don't sweat that. And I had a number of companies tell me, like, don't use Japanese in the classroom. I was like, what do you expect me to do? Like, one time I had a classroom with 28 kids. I was their main English teacher for a year, and they were the worst behaved class in that school, and probably in the history of the school, based on what I heard the office staff talking about. And they would just throw me in there alone, no Japanese, and they were just unbelievably unruly and crazy and loud and manipulative, and it was just like, wow. And so I don't believe in that. I think you should have the ability to communicate with them in Japanese, and basically the ability to protect your own dignity. You don't want to be the dancing bear, but again, you don't want to be the authoritarian either. So it's definitely a balancing act, but there's another aspect in that working with small children can be very educational and fun. They're really different, and they're at a very pure time in their life, and if you care about them, they can pick up on that. They'll really come to love you and be your little buddies, and you'll watch them grow over the years. Even 2 or 3 years is it's a massive amount of time for someone who's 4 or 5 years old. I've got kids here now at my school that started when they were in year 1, and now they're getting kind of into upper elementary, junior high, stuff like that, which is it's pretty amazing to see, and it gives you a place in the community if you're going to be around for a while, which is one reason why, even I should say when I do land a position in remote software development, either in support or as a full-time developer, I'll probably always maintain some connection to the school or teaching English, just because it is a good way to stay connected with the community. And Japan can be an intensely lonely place, even in a situation like mine. But if you have no connection to the community, no Japanese ability, it's like living in a wasteland, you know. So yes, teaching small kids can be very frustrating, but it's an inevitable part of the job. But it doesn't have to inevitably be frustrating. It all depends on how you process it, and it can be a great way of training your mind. You know, you have one week you have just a horrific class with these kids, and the class comes around again the next week, and you have to go in and start over. It can teach you a lot about your concentration and presence and ability to one of the trickiest parts of it all is the ability to consistently have them focus on reviewing incredibly simple things that would bore anybody to tears. And so that's another thing you have to keep in mind is that they're spending their whole day in their environment with their language and their culture, expressing all these creative thoughts and dealing with all these concepts that are very engaging for them, and then they have to come to English class after school when they're already tired and focus on a language they don't really have any connection with and is impossibly different from Japanese. So they're not exactly in the best situation either. It's just one of those things. But if you can associate that environment with something that's a little bit fun and entertaining and come across as someone who cares about them and notices when they're trying and enforces good behavior and congratulates them when they do well, and just keep that up, it can be somewhat rewarding. So this is after, I've had some of the craziest kids as students. I don't know what it is, but that's just, my karma, I guess. So, yeah, so there it is. Working with kids is one of those things.